Hey friends, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Jamie and here I share tips about simple living, organization, and productivity. Last month, my husband and I celebrated our 13th wedding anniversary. So in honor of that, I thought it would be fun to do a video with my husband, Tyler. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
For those of you who may be new, about 2.5 years ago, we began decluttering our home on a large scale. In the span of about a year and a half, we decluttered about 80% of the items in our home. I have a video all about it, but it totally changed everything for us. Decluttering seems to be everywhere right now, and I know for me, some people make it look really easy. And I think it is easier for some people than it is for others. I've heard from a lot of people that their spouse just isn't on board. Today, I thought it would be fun to show you how differently we approach decluttering. I have a list of questions that I've compiled for us to kind of go back and forth with.
All right.
To start off, when we first started our decluttering journey, what were some of the first things that popped into your mind that needed to go? I'll say mine. Let's say ours at the same time and see if any of them overlap. 1, 2, 3.
Craft
Airsoft
stuff,
guns, pool
kitchen
table,
stuff, organizing containers. Everything that's her stuff.
Well, your stuff
and
is
everything
easy.
my stuff.
I could easily pick out what it was that he should get rid of. And obviously he could easily pick out what he wanted me to get rid of.
Yeah, and the stuff that was hard is vice versa.
Yes.
Like she said, ping pong table.
Your tools, that was another one. You had a lot of tools that you weren't really using.
You knew you needed 3 hammers.
Not me and not you anymore. This is where the real questions start. What was 1 or 2 things that you had a hard time decluttering and why?
So the things that I had a really hard time decluttering, I would say, any one of those from the list. The ping pong and pool table was really hard. We had moved into this house. It was a brand new neighborhood. A lot of people were moving in. Thought it was a great way to bond, make friends. Cool ping pong and pool table. You can convert it back and forth to either one. Invited neighbors over, had a great time. As time went on, it just wasn't used. It just started collecting things. It was dust. It was constantly in the way. And it just became clutter, is really what it was. I could probably go over every single one of those things on my list on why it was hard. My tie collection. I had a whole bunch that I had collected when I was living in Europe. And each one of those kind of had a memory, or I had traded ties with other people that had lived there and growing that collection. But it was a lot of ties. And even my guitar, I had got that being in college. And the whole reason why I did that was so that I could wow some girl, which there she is. And then I really hadn't played it much ever since I got married. It was just collecting dust. And so those were some hard things for me to get rid of. Now, what would you say that is for you?
That's kind of a hard one. I am an extremely sentimental person, so I had a really hard time decluttering overall. I would say it was because we saw immediate benefits with decluttering that I was able to keep going. So I would say something really hard for me to declutter was hobby items. Like you said, craft stuff. I used to really love crafting, and once I decided that I wasn't really how I wanted to spend time once we had kids, it was kind of hard to say goodbye to those things. It kind of felt like I was saying goodbye to a part of myself, and that was a little hard. And that probably wasn't the hardest thing, but that is one of the first things that comes to mind. The treadmill was another.
Yeah.
I had always seen the treadmill as a symbol of me being in shape. I had used the treadmill faithfully for probably the first 6 months that we had it. And then I just never did anything with it. And we moved it 2 more times after I kind of had stopped using it. And I don't need to tell you, but it was a beast to me. You were actually the one doing the lifting. So
really heavy.
But I really had to realize that getting rid of the treadmill didn't mean I wasn't ever going to exercise. I realized how much I loved going for bike rides. So I really had to be honest with myself about how I didn't really even love indoor running in the first place. And I could still be active and healthy without the treadmill that I wasn't even using.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because as we're talking about these things that were easy or hard for us to get rid of, and those things that were hard were like the common denominator was that symbol that it represented. Like my pool and ping pong table, by having that meant I was fun.
And my treadmill meant I was fit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an interesting point. Question number 2. What was one thing that you were glad I decluttered and why?
I would have to say your treadmill. I know we just talked about that, but that was so heavy and hard. Every time you asked me to do something with it, move it, I felt like our 8-year-old that when you'd ask him to do a job or the dishes, I was like, I almost wanted to pout. Every time I see that, I'm like, yes.
But you were a good sport about it. You never complained.
Yes.
Outwardly. Apparently you were a mess inside, but.
Yeah, and grateful for all those that also helped me move that, because I did not do that by myself.
It took a few. It was big. It was a heavy treadmill.
Yeah. It was very tough.
Yeah.
So I was very relieved when we got rid of that.
That's fair.
What were the things that you were really glad that I got rid of?
So we kind of already talked about this, but the pool table / ping pong table was all in one. You were playing with it less and less. Your dad would come over and you guys would play occasionally, but he had a ping pong table, pool table at his house, so you were playing it more frequently there, I would say. In addition to that, we also had a foosball table, which was quite a bit smaller, but it was right next to the pool table in the garage. We also used that quite a bit at the beginning, and then it wasn't getting used at all. And once you made this decision, I left it up to him because it was kind of his thing. It's not like I was inviting my friends over to play, but it was your thing. So I left it up to you when you decided that you were, something that you wanted to part with. And do you remember what happened when we sold it? Both of those tables, do you remember what happened when we sold it and it was gone and it was just open space out there?
Oh yeah, the kids loved it.
Yes, like a second playroom for the kids. They started playing in the garage all the time. They would go ride their bikes or their scooters or whatever. I mean, just, a little space in our garage, but it was so nice. And also, I have to mention your extensive airsoft gun collection. None of them were kept loaded or even had the batteries in them, so they weren't dangerous for the kids to be around at all, but they were just kind of an eyesore.
And it was just so awkward for you because she was the one at home while I was always the one at work. And when the kids were outside playing, the garage was always open and the whole street could see those guns on the wall. Mm-hmm. And she always had to explain herself or help sell or just explain to the neighbors how, no, I'm not violent.
He's actually a nice guy. Yeah.
Or there was one time she was telling me when a police officer was driving by and she was hoping that he wouldn't stop and see it. No.
He was parked. I was taking Blake to preschool at the time. And I opened the garage door and there was a cop sitting in front of our house. He never approached or anything. I still don't know. Maybe he was just making his rounds and he had to stop and fill out a report or something. I have no idea. But I thought someone called it in and he's checking to make sure that these aren't real. Because they looked real. A lot of them looked real. And every time he would take them out to use them, he had to put an orange tip on them. But if they're inside your house, you don't have to have an orange tip on them. So I don't know if that's why the cop was there to, anyway, it could have been something totally unrelated. But those guns actually gave me a lot of grief. I was really happy when he let go of those.
Yeah.
He kept 2 because it still is a hobby. Do you think you'll keep those 2 forever?
I don't know. I mean, I went from having 16.
Yeah, I think you only had 13.
Was it 13?
Maybe. You had like 13 to 15.
The wall was full.
Yeah.
2 giant-sized pegboards. Finally got rid of all of them but 2, and those 2 are pretty small. And I mean, it got to a point where Jamie would tell me, like, you need to put a curtain over this.
Yes, we did.
It just became such a pain. There were dust collectors. They would break occasionally, and I had put a lot of time in repairing. Same with the ping pong and pool table. Like, when it got to a point where I wasn't using as much, wasn't within the rhythm of our lifestyle, it kind of started falling apart, breaking. The kids were scribbling on it. It was like another thing to constantly tell the kids, no, get off of. So it was amazing the weight that leaves your mind when you end up getting rid of all these things that you think you need to have.
Yeah, that's so true. And question number 3. What was one thing you were surprised I decluttered and why?
I was really surprised about your crafts. That was something we had carried with us from move to move ever since we had first got married. And when it started, it was a whole room designated, shelves, boxes, a whole table, everything. And when you decided to go through that and start getting rid of it, I was like, who's this?
And that was like absolute last
Yeah.
that I actually went through that, because that was a hard thing to part with.
And if you had seen pictures of what that room looked like and what it is now, it's gone from a whole room to a box. Congratulations, sweetie.
Thank you.
Another thing that I was really happy that you got rid of was that dumb blackberry bush. We moved into this house. We had lots of dirt areas designated for plants. It was great. And the one thing she really wanted to put in was this blackberry bush. I didn't know there was a different blackberry bush that didn't have thorns and one that did have thorns.
I didn't know that either, and I happened to get the one that was thorned.
And it was literally a thorn in my side. Because every time I go to mow the lawn, as you know, if you guys are familiar with blackberry bushes, they grow and spread out.
Yeah.
They grow over the grass, and as I would go through and mow, I would have to get to that part of it, and it'd be like jungle time, because the lawnmower would start pushing it out. It would start like cutting it as I was going, and then all that stuff that was getting pushed or underneath would then whip back, and I would have to start doing this like...
It was kind of like Billy Ray Cyrus's Achy Breaky Heart dance of the 90s. Like, he would pull out some moves. In my defense, like you said, when we first moved into this house, we had dirt. I was so excited to try my hand at gardening. I mean, I had always wanted to do that, and so I went and bought this blackberry bush. I knew nothing about them other than we liked to eat blackberries, so I felt like it was a safe bet. But lo and behold, it was actually a marionberry bush, which I later found out has sharper and denser thorns than rose bushes. I didn't know anything about properly staking it so that it would grow upward. Basically, it was growing outward all over the place. It was literally just doing this, and it was a mess. But it had finally started producing, which was actually fun for me because I was starting to see the literal fruits of my labors.
It's crazy to think that all these things that we think will make our life better, this blackberry bush that'll give us food, this ping pong table that'll do this, that it'll eventually make us happier and better.
Or healthier. That was
my
thing. I'm going to feed my children garden grown berries, you know.
But all the work, you don't realize the consequences of having all that stuff. I mean, that blackberry bush, we had to constantly cut that thing.
Yeah.
It grew so fast. And you couldn't even enjoy the backyard because we were running around stepping on thorns. And it was the same way. It's like, we thought the ping pong table would be really cool. But by having that, it took up a lot of space and it was less area for the kids to... There's always consequence. And we don't think of when buying and bringing something into our home that there's a consequence to having that too.
That's so true.
What was something that you were really surprised that I got rid of?
I would say the Halloween decor would be mine. He loves Halloween a lot. I personally do not. I have to work really hard to not loathe the entire month of October. The kids love it. He loves it. So I try to facilitate fun things in October. It is growing on me. I will say that. He inherited a lot of Halloween things from his parents, stuff that he grew up with. So it was, not only was it cool to him, but it was also sentimental because it was stuff that they had put out in their yard when he was a kid. Stuff that you had bought, stuff that one year your mom gave you a whole bunch of Halloween decorations for Christmas, I think. In fact, when we first moved in, before we had sod, he had enough Halloween decor to make a small graveyard in our front yard. Everyone thought it looked awesome, and it did. But it was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff to store, a lot of stuff to maintain, a lot of stuff to make sure it didn't get broken or stolen or whatever. So he dramatically reduced the amount of Halloween decorations that he had. I think for you, you realized it was stuff that you had to put out and take down and find a place for and maintain. And
it was a lot of stuff. We kind of had an overabundance of Halloween stuff to really fill the yard. Like she said, lights, graveyard. Then by getting rid of all that stuff, it was a lot less to have, it freed up a lot of space.
Question number 4. What is something that we both had a hard time getting rid of? I want you to answer first and see if it's the same answer as what I was going to say.
I think we're both going to be on the same page with this because the things that we both had a hard time with were things we both saw it had utility. I would say it was the second refrigerator
that was
we had in the garage because moving in. It was something that was great. Our family was growing when we moved to this house. We had brought it over from our last place and where we lived. It was a great place to store like all this extra drinks and stuff, and friends coming over, give them drinks. It was out there with the ping pong and pool table. It just seemed to just fit so well with who we wanted to be and with these symbols that pertain to the things that we had. And what would you say?
Same. I would definitely say that outdoor refrigerator. This was actually the beginning of this year that we decluttered that. And we'd had it for like 9 years. Like you said, it came from our previous place. It wasn't new when we got it either.
Yeah.
It had begun to go out. And so it wasn't necessarily a matter of should we get rid of it as much as it was a matter of should we replace it. And we've been without it for about 5 months. And it took me getting serious about keeping our main fridge and freezer really organized in order to maximize the space in there, since I didn't have the luxury of just putting something in the outdoor fridge or freezer anymore. Yeah, so we don't have plans to replace it because so far we've been fine with just the one fridge. Just as a side note, we decided to list the fridge, and since it was going out, we disclosed that and listed it for free. They just had to come pick it up. And the man that bought it was a retired fridge repairman. I think he was buying it for his daughter, right?
Yeah.
He was going to fix it up and give it to her. And it was just the perfect match. That has happened several times when we've decluttered, where the item that we're getting rid of just seems to get matched with the perfect owner. It makes it a little bit easier to get rid of something, I think, when that happens.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice that it's going to somebody that's actually going to use it rather than us holding on to it and it just collects dust.
Yeah. It was still working. In fact, I don't know. The temperature was fluctuating. I don't know what was going on. We maybe could have fixed it ourselves.
That was the tipping point, I would say. We didn't really evaluate whether we needed it or not until it started running into issues.
Well, and we had to buy thermometers to put inside of it because I didn't dare put anything out there unless I could monitor the temperature. And so we had to buy a thermometer for the fridge and the freezer, and I would have to periodically go out and check and make sure that what was, it was maintaining its temperature. I didn't dare put meat out there anymore. And so that was, I think we both started realizing it was becoming more work than what it was adding, and we didn't really need it.
Yeah, and it was even at that point where we were thinking, do we really need something this big? So we started looking at smaller refrigerators. And then we really got thinking, well, we still have plenty of space in this fridge. If we organized and really kind of found out what we needed instead of just having extra things on hand, it really became something that we didn't really need the fridge at all. We could actually do everything with this fridge.
Yeah. If you've been around for a while and you've seen any of my other videos, I often talk about, instead of looking to stuff to solve our problems, often we have to look at our habits. So for us, we still like to have an occasional soda or cold water or something like that, but it's become, instead of having a fridge that's fully stocked all the time, it's like we've both had to say, okay, when I take one out and drink it, I'm going to put one in to replace it. So making a little tiny habit change. And like I said, we really
haven't missed it.
No.
At all. Yeah.
Question number 5. When we first thought of decluttering, what was one thing that we both knew needed to go? I bet we both have the same answer. So let's say this at the same time on 3. 1, 2, 3. Kids toys.
Okay.
Same
yeah. Thing. Yeah. Kids stuff, kids toys.
Yeah. Not all of them, but that needed a major pare back. That was a huge pain point for us, for them.
It was everywhere. They get into it. They don't put it away. It's on the floor.
It's too hard for them to clean up.
Main cause of messes and heartache. I mean, it's everywhere, and it makes you look like you even have a lot more stuff, I think, than you do. Yeah. It's crazy because everything is out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely have to say kid stuff.
Yeah, I think too. If you haven't seen my playroom declutter video, go watch that. I think it's the very first video that I ever did. The lighting's not great in it, but there's some helpful tips. It wasn't that we just went in and started taking out our favorite things. We started noticing the toys that weren't getting picked up, the toys that weren't getting played with, that would get dumped out, forgotten about, and then it was a pain for the kids to even want to pick it up. And so, yeah, go watch that video, and that answers a lot of kind of what our approach was with this whole thing. But I would say one thing that sticks out to me when I think about that is when we got married and we started having kids, his parents had saved his Lego bin. I mean, a huge, I don't even know how many gallons. tote that was. I mean, it was
Oh yeah,
big.
40 gallons or something.
Yeah, because Legos were a big deal for him growing up. And so when he first introduced Blake, who's our oldest, to Legos, it was love at first brick, if you will. No, he instantly, I've never been a huge Lego fan. I didn't, that wasn't my thing growing up. I didn't have the patience, I don't know. But when you introduced Blake to that, that was like, he instantly loved it. And Blake has always been the kid that it's hard to impress him with the toy. It's hard to get him to, he's a kid, so he gets dazzled by shiny things. But to get something that catches his attention and keeps his attention was a big deal. And so we had this huge Lego bin. And so we would just let Blake have at it. At the time, we had a young toddler. And so we had our spare room that we would let him go in and he would dump them out. And I mean, it was so many Legos. And I remember I used to feel so frustrated because I was the one cleaning them up. I mean, you would too, but usually you were at work or whatever. I remember feeling so frustrated. And then I saw a video from Dawn, the minimal mom, and she talked about certain toys are just too much for kids to manage. And that really resonated with me because I realized I was expecting him to do something that was way above what he or even I wanted to clean up. Getting rid of kids' stuff really actually simplified their lives. They play better. We're nagging less for them to clean up. And anyway, but that was a big pain point when we first started. It wasn't the first place that we started, but it was something that we both knew needed a really big overhaul.
Yeah, it was huge.
Even now, we have really dramatically reduced what we have because now we've kind of clued into what it is they really want to play with. Question number 6. What is the next thing we're planning on decluttering? We obviously have the same answers because we talked about these things before we listed them. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, we have our kids changing stages of life. Our youngest is now in his toddler phase, and he has a rocking chair and a crib in his room. And it's one that we've talked about and now listing and selling. And
we have listed several things for sale recently. So, like you said, the crib.
Yeah, the crib.
The rocking chair.
Now that I think about it, the tiller.
Yeah, the garden tiller. I listed my sewing machine. It's just not something that I don't know how to sew really that well. And so it's not something that I really have much of an interest in. So I listed that. My wedding dress. Let me know in the comments below if you have any creative ideas for getting rid of your wedding dress. I've heard a lot of different ones, and I don't really want to keep it around, but I would be interested if anyone has any creative ideas for things to do with it.
Yeah, the 40 gallon of Legos. They were just all old. And our kids' birthdays, Christmases are always getting new Legos. So that was something that was very easy to phase out and sell as well.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do a video at some point on how we have changed how we give gifts to our kids. Because obviously, if you've watched any of my videos, especially my last one about decluttering not being enough and you have to change your habits and change the things that you do in order to keep the stuff out, we've had to change the way that we give gifts. And our kids do still get gifts. We still get gifts, but we've changed the way that we go about it. So anyway, that's just a side note.
Yeah, but I think those are all the things that we're going to be decluttering next. Still some big things. And how long would you say that we've been decluttering for now?
Oh, overall?
Yeah.
2.5 years.
And it's a constant ongoing journey. It's never just like this end destination because you're always changing stages or phases in your life and you're always bringing new things in because of those, but you're also getting rid of things because you're leaving some. So
we're also getting ready for kind of a spring cleaning, head to toe declutter. We can always tell when it's time to do some decluttering because it always starts to feel like there's a lot of stuff around to maintain. The kids aren't playing as good. Their rooms are frequently messy. It isn't that we've bought a ton of new stuff, but the kids are always bringing home some little toy from birthday parties or kids' meals or the dentist or school or whatever. And they get played with for a day or two, and then they're done with it, and they just get forgotten about, and then they just add to the clutter. It's obviously not just the kids' stuff. It's stuff that just makes its way in somehow. And so we do this about twice a year, usually kind of in the spring and fall, I guess. But we just go through head to toe and just kind of see what is causing more problems than it's solving. And I would say this declutter that we're doing now is kind of a really deep declutter. There's obviously the kids stuff like, that comes in on a pretty regular basis that we need to go through, and we do involve them in that process. They're very involved in that process as well. But it's also the things, I feel like this declutter is like the tiller. We've had that for about 4 years. And my wedding dress, we got married 13 years ago. I feel like through all these declutters, that was always something that I just passed by because I wasn't ready to even think about what to do with it. But now I'm ready to part with it. I realize I'm never going to wear it again. I don't think my daughter will have any interest in wearing it in 20 years or however long that is. It's a long time to keep it around. So this is going to be kind of a deeper declutter for us. But yeah, it feels good so far.
Yeah, especially coming out of the winter.
Yeah.
Get this like hibernating mode.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, when spring is here, it's time for that cleaning.
Yeah. Okay, question number 7. I want to ask you here. I have a lot of friends whose husbands are not on board with decluttering. And I get a lot of comments from people who say their spouse is not on board. But you have been on board since the beginning.
Yeah.
If you go watch my video, the benefits of decluttering and what it did for me, I'll link it below. And I do tell more about that in the video. So what advice would you offer to anyone whose husband is not on board with decluttering?
I would say a lot of it came down to, like, how much do you like taking care of this? How hard is it to maintain this? As I really started asking myself those questions, or when we started having a conversation about that, it made me realize more and more how nice it would be not to have to fix this or maintain this or whatever the case may be. Because as a husband, having a wife comes with a honey-do list. And having less stuff, that list gets a lot shorter.
Well, it's not even just having a wife, it's having stuff.
Just having stuff. Yeah, just having stuff. For me, I'll be doing a lot of things. We used to have a playground, massive playground. The whole thing was wood. I would be the one going out and restaining that entire playground.
What, every year or two?
Like every year or two. And how nice, like how much easier that made my life to get rid of that. We switched it for a different playground that was metal, so you didn't have to do all that restaining, but how much nicer, like just to simplify and change to something like that, how much more simple that made my life. So we all are doing things, regardless if it's Jamie taking care of the kids while I'm at work, I'll be fixing or changing something. And how much do you like doing that? How hard is that for you? How nice would that be not to have to do that anymore? And it really starts resonating for me as a man anyway.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, you were on board from the beginning, but it started to really, I guess we started to really pick up momentum when we started reaping the benefits of less to do, less to maintain, less to do around the house. I would say too, there may even be some men out there that are watching this. I don't know how many men watch this channel, but if there are some, you may be struggling with a wife that won't get on board with decluttering. Obviously, it depends on who has what roles around the house, but for me, the idea of having less, kind of like what he said, the idea of having less to do was so appealing. Not from a laziness perspective, but being a wife and a mom or whatever your role is, having something to take some of that stuff off my plate was and still is my #1 reason for decluttering. Because I wanted to have more time to do things that I wanted to do, like enjoy my kids instead of always be nagging for them to clean up and for me to be cleaning up while they were doing something that I wished I could join in. I would say, just correct me if I'm wrong, to summarize that, if you have a spouse that's not on board, helping them see the pain points of owning more, helping them see what it's costing them to own more, what they're missing out on because you have stuff that has to be maintained and taken care of. And obviously there's stuff that is inevitable. As long as you live in a house that has electricity, there's going to be light bulbs, but there's a lot of stuff that's not inevitable. So yeah, just pointing that out, I guess, to them.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do a rapid fire round. Okay, so I'm just going to ask a couple of quick questions that don't need an explanation. Just point to the person that this describes. Who is more sentimental?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. You're not a very sentimental person. Who has more stuff? Yeah, that's true. Who has more clothes? That is not true. You even said that the other day. You said that you had more clothes than I did.
No, I'm trying to think. I think, yeah, because, well, if my work gives me a lot of stuff, I need to go through and probably declutter some of the old stuff. So
Yeah.
I think I have more.
Who has more hobbies?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
I
glad
think
you
I
admitted
do.
that. I didn't know
Yeah.
if you would or not.
I think I do.
And who is cleaner?
Yeah, probably you.
You have been, I will say, you have been the consistent clean one since we've been married, but I've changed my ways.
Yeah, for me, I think I've grown up with the out of sight, out of mind. So if I don't see it, it's not there. And it's just
there.
like, it is there. She does really good. It's in the cupboards, the drawers, like everything, like looks clean.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've become more like her as we've been married together. Now that actually has become more important.
Yeah, that's true.
So I've got a question for you.
What's that?
Would you say that on our decluttering journey, we've actually become closer to each other?
Yes. I would say decluttering caused us to kind of sift through a lot of the stuff to get at the heart of what is really important, what our priorities are, what our common goals are, what things we really enjoy doing together. You know, I wouldn't say all of our hobbies are the same because obviously I've never been into airsoft, as we talked about earlier. But we both enjoy traveling. We love to travel. We love to travel as a family. We love to spend time with the kids. We love to do fun stuff with the kids. We love to do educational stuff with the kids. And decluttering really kind of showed, I feel like it really shined more of a light on those common goals. And it's, you know, kind of paved the way for us to be able to do more as a family and do more together.
Yeah, I would say that all this stuff that we have, even though you might not be maintaining or fixing it, in our minds, it's still calling for our attention. Use me, use me, use me. And those things will cause us to have our time spent with those rather than each other.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you really kind of find what you value in that is getting rid of those things gives us more time for us.
Yes.
And so I would say it's definitely brought us closer together.
Well, as you were saying that, it made me think of, not only does it give us more time together, because we were spending time together before, but I feel like it is more carefree time together because it's not all the stuff hanging over our heads, things that we have to get to this, but we're taking a break. It really freed up our time and our mental capacity to be able to enjoy life more because we don't have all this extra stuff weighing us down.
Yeah.
Thanks for being a good sport and doing this with me. I thought this would be a really fun thing for us to do together. Thank you for watching and hanging out with us today. Leave me a comment below if you have any questions for him or any questions for me, but he's kind of the novelty here. And also leave me a comment below if you would like to see a video of ways that we have simplified our life. We could do another video together if that's something that people want to see. There's a lot more that we haven't really touched on today about that. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe.
Thank you for watching, friends.
Have a great day.